It was Halloween night, and I found myself alone in my house. My husband was out of town for work, and my daughter was at a friend's party. I had initially planned to go out with some friends, but something told me to stay in, and I wasn't feeling well. Perhaps it was the chill in the air, or maybe the dim lighting that seemed to hang a little lower that night. Who knows? I live in a decently sized house, a bit secluded and surrounded by woods. I've always loved the privacy it offers, but tonight it felt more like isolation. The thought passed my mind that maybe I should have gone out after all. Little did I know that the real nightmare was yet to unfold. I decided to make the most of my quiet night in. Lighting a few scented candles, I curled up on the sofa with a glass of wine and a thriller novel. The flickering candlelight cast shadows on the walls, adding a warm but mysterious ambience. As I was getting lost in my book, I heard a knock at the door. Glancing at the clock, I noticed it was just past 10 p.m. Strange, I thought. I'm not expecting anyone. I hesitated, but eventually got up to answer it. When I opened the door, nobody was there. I looked down to find a small pumpkin placed at the doorstep. It wasn't carved or decorated, just an ordinary pumpkin. I picked it up and carried it inside, feeling a bit uneasy, but telling myself it was probably just a Halloween prank from the neighborhood kids. I put the pumpkin on the table and returned to my book, trying to shake off the feeling of dread that had started to gnaw at me. But the atmosphere in the house felt different now, heavier. Every creak of the house settling, every rustle of the trees outside seemed to echo louder in my ears. Just as I was convincing myself that I was overthinking things, I heard another knock this time, more of a thud, and it was coming from my bedroom door upstairs. My heart pounded in my chest. I knew I had locked all the doors and windows, but the sound was too distinct to be a product of my imagination. Torn between investigating and pretending it never happened, I decided I had to know. As I moved towards the staircase, my phone buzzed. An unknown number flashed on the screen with a message that read, "Do you like the pumpkin? It suits you." I froze, my blood turning to ice. Now I was certain that something was terribly wrong. I needed to act and act fast. My mind raced through the possibilities. Calling the police crossed my mind, but what would I tell them? That I got an anonymous text and heard a knock? I needed something more concrete. Thinking quickly, I went on YouTube and typed realistic sound effects. Among them was the sound of a gunshot. I opened the video, paused it, and turned the volume to maximum. And I had been already connected my phone Bluetooth speakers, and my finger hovering over the play button. My other hand clutched a vase I had picked up from the living room, poor protection, but better than nothing. Heart pounding, I began my ascent up the stairs, each step creaking under my weight. I reached the top and stood before my bedroom door. Summoning every ounce of courage, I kicked it open. The room was dark, but the limited light from the hallway revealed that it was empty. Or so it seemed. Then I heard a shuffling sound coming from the closet. My gut twisted in horror. Someone was in there. With a shaking hand, I pressed the play button. The sound blared through the house, echoing off the walls. Almost instantly, I heard a panicked rustling from the closet, followed by the unmistakable sound of a window being opened and closed hastily. I rushed to the window to see a figure sprinting through the woods, disappearing into the darkness. My body trembled, but a wave of relief washed over me. The intruder was gone, scared off by my desperate ploy. The police arrived after 30 minutes of my frantic call, their sirens a shrill break in the heavy silence. They combed through every room, every crevice, but found no one. It was as if the intruder had vanished into thin air, leaving only the unlocked and slightly ajar closet window as evidence. They took the pumpkin and my statement, And while they commended me for my quick thinking, they also cautioned me to stay vigilant. "We'll do what we can, but until we catch this person, you're not safe," the officer said before leaving. Those words struck a nerve. Even with the police involved, there was no guarantee of safety. A couple of days later, I received an envelope in the mail with no return address. Inside was a blank card, but it carried the faint scent of the same candles I had lit on Halloween night. The unspoken message was clear. The intruder was still out there and could reach me at any time. The scarcity of clues and the inability to identify the intruder left a shroud of suspense hanging over my life. Weeks rolled by, each day a mirror of the one before, shrouded in an anxiety I couldn't shake off. My husband returned from his trip, aware but not fully comprehending the seismic shift in our lives. I thought his presence would make me feel safer, but instead I felt more vulnerable, worried not just for myself, but for him as well. I started seeing a therapist to help cope with the constant stress, but the safe space of the counseling room could never fully extend to my own home. Friends and family recommended moving, starting afresh somewhere else. But something kept me tethered to the place, perhaps a stubborn will to reclaim the sanctuary that my home once was. However, the transformation within me was more profound than any change of address could mend. I took to long walks, often finding myself drawn to the woods that bordered our property, the same woods the intruder had fled into. I'd stand at the edge, peering into the thick foliage, wondering what secrets it kept. A mixture of dread and compulsion filled these moments, as if the trees could whisper back answers to the questions that haunted me. Social gatherings became a challenge. Simple conversations turned into internal debates as I assessed every new acquaintance with suspicion. Could this person be the one who invaded my privacy? My sense of trust was eroded, replaced by a shield of skepticism that I wore like a second skin. Even laughter, once a sign of shared joy, had become a trigger that could spiral me into panic. The realization dawned that the intruder hadn't just trespassed into my home. They had invaded the very core of my being. The tangible walls of my house were no longer the boundaries they had crossed. It was the intangible walls around my soul that had been irrevocably damaged. As Halloween approached again, the weight of the year's events bore down on me. What was once a festival of fun and fright had morphed into a bitter reminder of vulnerability and violation. My husband suggested skipping the holiday, perhaps even leaving town for a few days, but I found myself disagreeing. Running away wouldn't rebuild the broken parts of me. Confronting my fears would. I decided to host a small gathering at home, inviting only the closest of friends and family. It wasn't the rollicking celebration of years past, but rather a quiet affair filled with restrained laughter and hushed conversations. Everyone knew, though they didn't say, that this was as much an act of defiance as it was a social gathering. As the clock neared midnight, I found myself standing alone in the kitchen, staring out into the dark abyss of the woods. Just as the hands of the clock aligned at 12, my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number, a cruel déjà vu that seized my heart. I hesitated before opening the message. It read, "Happy Halloween. Until we meet again." My fingers trembled as I showed the message to the police officer who had stayed back for security. He assured me they would boost their efforts to find the person, but I knew deep inside that this specter might never fully disappear from my life. Despite the physical and emotional fortifications I had built, the facade of safety had been irreparably cracked. A haunting message was a grim reminder that some stories don't have neat conclusions, that some fears linger, lurking in the recesses of our minds. However, Life had to go on. I couldn't let the unknown dictate the steps I took, even if each one was tinged with caution. I had faced the most terrifying night of my life and come out the other side, scarred but resilient. The experience taught me a hard lesson, that being vulnerable is just a part of being human. But it also showed me something important. In that vulnerability, in that weakness, there's also strength. Strength to get up and keep going, even when we're scared out of our minds.